When you are.
Got 1 minute.
I see Mr. Riccardi is here with his new office digs.
Hear ye, hear ye. I officially gavel in the Board of Zoning Appeals Board for the June 21st agenda. Liz, will you read the preamble and do our roster call?
Sure, thank you. My name's Liz Kukla. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm going to read the preamble for you this morning. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law under COVID-19 emergency declaration, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conduct its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again and mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Please note that call-in users can use *6 to unmute themselves. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube for public view. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on a particular case via our website and email. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comments on a particular matter. And I will call the roll. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Faith?
Present.
Ms. Britt?
Here.
Ms. Barnes?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
All right. Are there any postponements?
We do have a request for West 65th Street, Apartment 92, Gordon Square LLC at 1331 West 65th Street. Councilwoman Jenny Spencer has requested a postponement to allow for additional time for community engagement. If we could ask if the appellant is here, just to be sure that he is aware of this request.
Is anyone here representing West 65th Street project?
I'm not representing, I'm just here as a neighbor to the
All
building.
right. Anyone here representing the owner of the West 65th Street project?
Mr.
No,
Donovan?
we are also here.
Oh, sorry.
We are
Somebody-
also here as a neighbor.
Okay, so there's some neighbors that are here, but there's nobody here representing the project itself.
Okay, yes, just as a side note, the applicant was on the email chain with Councilwoman Spencer. So
Okay.
they have been notified through email, although this came late last week. So we can assume that they are not here because they've been notified via writing.
Okay. Our policy has been that we allow the council person, local development corporations to ask for postponements as a part of the procedures here. Given that, I would ask, I'll make a motion that we would accept the postponement and grant it a new date. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Can we call the roll just on establishing that?
Sure. Britt?
Yeah.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Faith?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes, without objection.
So the
All
date
right.
that we can give it is July 19th.
All righty.
That's
Pencil it in and get it. Neighbors, thank you for coming. Note that this proceeding will advance on July 19th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I wasn't aware that it was postponed.
Right.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Let us begin our
Well,
agenda.
I have a question. Will we be notified as to the
Yes, we
time?
will be.
We will be. Okay,
Yes,
by
sir.
mail or by email?
You'll receive it the same way that you received it last time. Did you receive our letter?
I did receive a letter,
Okay.
yes.
So you receive
Okay.
a hard copy letter instructing
Oh.
you to contact me for the link.
Okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
Lana, let's kick off the agenda.
All right, to kick it off, we have calendar number 21-026 at 1914 East 75th Street. Famicos Foundation owner proposes to erect a 4-story, 56-unit apartment building and accessory parking lot in an E2 multifamily residential district and an urban form overlay district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record.
All right, thank you. Will everyone for this case kindly raise your right hand? I'm going to make a statement. I'm looking for a response of I do with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do, Chris Shefton.
I do.
I
Diane
do.
Lewis.
Name?
I do. Katie VZ Gillette.
Okay, anyone else? I have three I do, so,
Deborah Lewis.
okay. Anyone else? Last call.
Cynthia Mumford. Cynthia Mumford, I do.
Okay. Anyone else?
Ellie Nelson.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Alan Mumford.
Okay. You're here for the East 75th Street case.
Correct.
Okay, great. Last call, anyone else? Hearing none, let's have history and the legal standard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been no change in the underlying zoning since 1929, but in May of this year, an urban overlay district was established for the property. In the records room, I found that in 1975, a permit was issued to erect a church, solid masonry. The permit also included asphalt parking, patron parking, sorry. There was a fence erected in 1979, and there was a permit in 1984 to erect a concrete block flat roof storage building. Mr. Chairman, there's also variances on file in calendar 03-319. A variance was granted to construct an accessory parking lot. And in calendar 09-047, a permit was issued to erect a non-conforming sign. And then, Mr. Chairman, in the more recent history in the Acela system, we see that a permit was issued in 2005 for interior and exterior alterations to an existing church. 2009, there were permits issued, and this is in reference to that zoning variance, to erect a 10 by 12 single face sign, wall sign. And Mr. Chairman, we see another permit was issued. Oh, no, that's the one that was issued in 2009. That's all that I have, Mr. Chairman. Back to you.
Well, legal standard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the grade height and off-street parking requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and the granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you very much. Maurice, remind us exactly in terms of the issues at hand for the variances we're considering.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have two variances today. We have the ground floor height. They're proposing 0 and they need to be at 18 inches. So there's a variance for that. And the other one is the fact that the parking lot is not behind a rear wall. And that's all we have today for that.
All right, who will be speaking on behalf of the project itself?
I will be speaking on behalf of the project. This is Katie VZ Gillette.
Okay, Katie, for you and all others who will give testimony, we ask that you try to concentrate and focus your remarks around the two variances that Maurice just described. Thank you very much, and let's go.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. Good morning. So we are here today. I'm seeking two variances for the new multifamily development at 1914 East 75th Street. I am joined by Chris Shefton of Famicos Foundation. She's the director of real estate. And I just would like to provide some quick background and context on the project itself. Next slide, please. So quick bit of history on the site itself. When it was originally developed, this was actually, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, this was actually a mid-block site and in a multifamily district. In the 1950s, Chester Avenue was cut through this neighborhood, and as we know, quite a large thoroughfare. And that actually impacts a part of the variance that we are requesting. In the 1970s, 1980s, as we heard from the record, a Kingdom Hall was constructed on the site. The congregation has since left, and in 2019, Famicos acquired the property. Next slide, please. Next. So as noted earlier, the zoning designation for the site is multifamily. And last month, an urban form overlay was applied to the site. And that was necessary. We were originally seeking a front yard variance for this particular development, but the Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the authority to grant front yard variances. Fortunately, the city of Cleveland does have tools available, such as the urban form overlay, that allows us to develop the site in more of a 21st century manner rather than a code that was written in the 1920s. Next slide, please. So looking a little bit closer at the site, it's just under an acre. And what I'd like to do is point out that the address for the site is East 75th Street and not Chester Avenue. There's actually no Chester Avenue addresses between East 55th Street and the East 90s. And again, that's going to influence part of the variance that we're seeking. Next slide, please. This slide shows just some of the photographs of the existing conditions of the site. There is a one-story Kingdom Hall and accessory parking that serves it today. Next slide, please. So as we look to redevelop the site as a multifamily use, the layout is relatively straightforward, follows strong urban design principles. The building itself is 56 units, 4 stories. There are some amenity spaces to support the apartment uses, and it's about 56,000 square feet. The footprint of the building lines Chester Avenue and East 75th Street, kind of hugging the right-of-way on 75th and set back 3 feet along Chester Avenue. And actually, the right-of-way does sit back pretty significantly at both those frontages from the back of the sidewalk. Typically, we're used to seeing the right-of-way along the back of the sidewalk, but in the case of this site, it's about, it varies from 9 to 12 feet from the back of the sidewalk. So there's, for example, on Chester Avenue, from the back of the sidewalk to the building itself is about 15 feet there. There will be fencing and landscaping to buffer the adjacent residential uses along the west and the north property line. And then sort of speaking to the first variance, the site contains 49 parking spaces, and that is going to be in a secure lot that's accessed off of East 75th Street. And per the zoning code, we're required to have 37 parking spaces with parking behind the rear wall of the main building. So if this development were to have a Chester Avenue address, which it does not, then we would have no issues meeting the zoning code requirement. But because the address of the project is on East 75th Street, our parking technically does not sit behind the main building. We are allowed a single row of parking along the building, which we have accommodated for, but essentially the 6 spaces in the northeast corner of the parking lot that we see here are not in compliance with the code. So we could eliminate those those 6 spaces, and still be in compliance with the total parking requirement. That would kind of be, if we want to say the easy solution from the zoning standpoint. But we've also heard from early community meetings that there's a strong desire to provide as much parking on site as possible. And so if we're to eliminate those 6 spaces, then we're going to reduce the amount of parking we can accommodate on site, and therefore the amount, those 6 spaces would likely be folks parking on the street, et cetera. So.
Can I ask a question about that? Is there a strategy to try to add some visual buffer by landscaping along 75th?
It's a great segue to the next slide.
Okay.
Can you please advance? So along 75th Street itself, we will have, actually there's going to be a low masonry wall and a gate that will, in addition to landscaping, that will buffer along 75th. Yeah, if you zoom in there, you can see a 4-foot high masonry wall, landscaping. There will be landscaping provided along the front of the building itself, as well as, again, between the adjacent properties.
All right, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry, we're having some technical difficulties here. Don't know why this is not. There we go.
Okay. So this slide here shows the first and second floor layouts of the building. The sort of orange yellow tones, those are representative of residential uses. The blue are amenity and support spaces. And as you can see on the left side, the first floor is about 50% amenity space, 50% residential. And in the lower left hand, that's the southwest corner of the building and the site, those are 2-story townhome units. So along the first floor there, we'd have living, kitchen, dining spaces. The bedrooms for those units, though, are located on the second floor, and that's just very intentional to kind of shield the sleeping areas from a little bit of a busier Chester Avenue frontage there. The third and fourth stories are primarily residential. There is a roof deck and a sky lounge on the 4th story as well. But speaking to these plans right here, on the first floor, to speak to the second variance, the code requires that residential spaces are a minimum of 18 inches above grade. So on the first floor where we see those yellow and orange spaces, we want the code is saying that it needs to be 18 inches above grade. This becomes a major challenge in terms of constructability, as it requires significant ramps within the building. We are allowed to have the commercial spaces at just flush with the finished floor, so 0 inches above grade, which is important for accessibility purposes, meeting the building code accessibility requirements, ADA, fair housing, et cetera, et cetera. But in order to get the residential spaces that are on the first floor to 18 inches above grade, again, it requires ramping. It requires the site's natural topography to sort of be in the building's favor. So it becomes an incredible challenge. But we believe and understand the intent of that 18 inches above grade to be in terms of the residents' privacy and security. So to address those intentions, we're doing a couple of things in those units. The windowsills are raised above the finished floor. So on the upper floors, residents have larger windows that extend, 12 inches above the floor, but on the first floor units, they will sit higher. There's also a landscape buffer that is provided to help, again, provide that additional security, that buffer, and therefore to address the intentions of raising the first floor height. And the next several slides are provided for reference. As I mentioned earlier, the third and fourth floor are primarily residential uses. The building itself here, you can see a series of 2D and 3-dimensional images and renderings. We have received approvals from both the local design review and the City Planning Commission for this project. And they were very well received from those committees.
All right,
If you'd like
thank
to
you.
advance, yeah, just a couple more slides, just to, quickly, just to show some 3-dimensional views of the project itself.
All righty.
No.
All right, with that, I will open up for any questions. Thank you.
Mr.
right.
Chairman, we have, let's see, Deborah Lewis with their hands raised, Cynthia Mumford, and Ms. Kukla as well, all have their hand
Let's
raised.
start with Ms. Kukla. Ms. Kukla?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to let you know that we have received here 16 opposition letters. We received these late in the week, so I was not able to get these over to Mr. Rulins for the PowerPoint. If you'd like, I could read one of the letters. They seem to all have the same concerns. I believe that there are also a couple people here that have submitted letters, and they may want to just express their concerns verbally.
Okay, why don't you give us a sample of that, and then we'll go back to those folks that have been sworn in to see which are opposed and which are in favor.
Sure. On June 21st, in June 2021, petition undersigned residents believe that the construction of a 56-unit apartment building at the corner of Chester and 75th Street is not a positive development for the neighborhood. We believe that now this type of density without traffic offset and parking accommodation is dangerous and unprecedented for a single corner along this east side of Cleveland stretch of Interstate 322. Rezoning to allow this development would be reckless, rezoning a traffic congestion that puts our community at risk for timely access by safety services, not just for the side streets leading to that corner, but for any westbound commuters. All neighbors have already experienced the impact of overflow parking when the building was operated as a house of worship. Excess cars parking on both sides of the street, including Sagamore, LaGrange, and Home Court. We believe the 56 units equates to 1.5 persons per unit, as well as 1.5 cars. In July, we opposed 40 units as too many. Now the planning is doubling down and raised to 56 transitory residence housing units. This leaves us to question our safety, the original planning promise of our quiet family-oriented community, and the ultimate deprecation of our property values at a time when the appetite for new single-family units has been shown to be high. There have been no details from FMICOS about how their plans resolve these real safety issues for those who actually live in the community. This must be done before any construction begins, not as an afterthought followed by sorry, we should have. They did not present solid information in the 2 community meetings held, so plans for the site should include notifications to at least signers of the July 2020 petition sent to the Cleveland Planning Office, providing the true site depiction and images of plan income targets. Lack of transparency for thoughtful neighborhood planning, we believe, will unfortunately lead to the same abandonment of current longtime residents that has plagued the inner city since the riots of 1960. And so most of these letters are form letters that have been signed by neighbors. And we did receive an email from Ronnie C., who also expresses concerns similar to the letters that were submitted. That's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so as a reminder, Mr. Chairman, we have Deborah Lewis, Cynthia Mumford, and Chris Shefton. Tim?
Sorry about that. Deborah, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be short since Secretary Kukla has read the community's response. We believe that the overlay for this is an attempt to relieve the developer of the 1-to-1 requirement for parking, which would have been 56 and not the 37, which is what the overlay provides. That overlay also the purpose of that overlay, as we understand it, was to provide and facilitate pedestrian to vehicle traffic. But the truth is that for this neighborhood, those who dwell here of a certain economic stance will require vehicles at the level of the original zoning, and more if they have visitors. Just a simple visitor to half of the building will flood our streets. There's no local entertainment. There's no upscale restaurants. There's no discount retailing for these dwellers. And so we believe that this overlay disregards that, and we have not seen anything, any plans of any type of off-street parking that would accommodate for this overflow at this intersection. We also believe that because of that, and because of the favor that this community development corporation has, there's a precedent being set for any land bank lots along this north side of Chester, which was traditionally held as being reserved for ownership. And as the collaborative workshop this weekend, where Secretary Marcia Fudge and Senator Sherrod Brown were keynotes, the Biden administration right now is targeting Black ownership. This is an opportunity to have it. We would have hoped that Famicos, as a community development organization, would be sponsoring that at this point in time. And so that I believe that that's my statement, and I will yield the floor.
Okay, let's gather all the statements and we'll ask for a response from the appellant. Anyone else here wanting to speak against the project?
We had Cynthia Mumford, and we had Chris Shefton.
Cynthia, let's go with you.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, my comments and response resonate to the letter that was led. And I would like to ask this committee, as it relates to the zoning, when will this systemic racism stop? Why is it that the people in the community, I live on East 75th, and most of and we were misrepresented. None of these details were provided to us during the said community meetings. When will systemic racism stop? Why is it that I heard the developer speak about the safety of the new tenants and not the safety of the existing residents in the community? When will this systemic racism stop? Why are we not given a voice as to what goes on in our community, given our economic status? We would ask that you sustain the approval of this variance or not approve this variance until the rest of the community can be educated as to this development, because we were not given any of this type of detail, and we should be able to respond, given a voice to respond. When will the systemic racism stop using these committees to close our mouths? Thank you.
All right. Who else was, Maurice, did you say had their hand up?
We have Chris Shefton from Famicos.
Okay. Is there anyone else besides Chris? Because I think I think some of these questions are best answered by Famicos. Is there anyone else here that would like to offer some commentary?
Loretta Williams.
Go ahead.
Loretta has the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to say it is a parking issue. When we first got the plans that we listened to, that they did give us, they were talking 40-some units, and we protested about the 40-some units only because of the parking situations. They went back to the drawing board and they said they were going to come back with a better plan. It really seems really bad that not only did they come back with a better plan, they came back and added about 10 more units to the a project. We're talking about parking. We're talking about street parking. We don't have street parking right now. So for them to come back, and it was in bad faith, to tell us they were going to think about lowering it, rather than lowering it, they raised it.
All right. Okay, let us go to Famicos. There's a couple outstanding questions from the community here. How would you answer them?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. So I just want to first start by thanking the representatives of the community today for being present at this meeting. I think what it does prove is that Famicos, as well as the city of Cleveland, have worked together to ensure that the residents are informed that the meeting was today. Because in addition to the notice that went out from the city, Famicos personally went out and flyered around the property itself, door knocked with all of the real estate development staff, with flyers, with contact information, with the latest rendering of the building, with the specifics of what was going to be presented in today's meeting, along with the announcement for when we plan to break ground on the flyer. So I'm happy to know that our communication was effective. As was mentioned by the residents that are present, there were 2 community meetings that were held. Contrary to what has been shared, at that time we did share detailed plans. After the first community meeting, we did go back and we reevaluated the parking situation to potentially include additional land bank lots for a future phase of district parking. I also just want to make sure that it's noted that the particular parcel that we're speaking of is not land bank lots, but is actually a privately purchased parcel. This, contrary to what has been stated in terms of the systemic oppression that is prevalent in things like zoning, the original use for this site was a multifamily building. We believe and stand by the fact that returning multifamily to this site, increasing the density, not only helps and improves the property value for the surrounding sites, removing an existing 1-story building and putting something more dense there, but also introduces the possibility for these new residents that are in Huff right now to become future residents and homeowners for the future. And so we believe introducing this product will allow residents to be introduced to Huff, fall in love with the community, and want to purchase a home there in the future. As those who may be familiar with Famicos and our history know that in addition to multifamily housing, we also do single family new construction as well as rehab. So home ownership is something that we're definitely committed to. But as was explained in the resident community meeting, we believe that the next generation of individuals, they're not ready to just jump right into home ownership, but introducing product like this multifamily, which will be less expensive than the multifamily that's going up surrounding this project, allows individuals to be able to fall in love with a community and a neighborhood to potentially become homeowners later. As it applies to just the additional things that we addressed as a part of the project, as a part of the community meetings, fencing was requested in order to shield the closest houses from the lights from cars. We have accommodated that. We've accommodated including additional landscaping so that's more attractive and not on the street. And so I think that we as an organization and our commitment to the community have shared multiple times, as I have communicated with both Ms. Lewis and Ms. Mumford via email separately and apart from. Our partner in the project, AES Management, has reached out to Ms. Mumford directly and had conversations with her, in addition to our executive director, as well as the council person.
Excuse me, a direct misrepresentation of the truth is really not warranted. I do appreciate your comments, Miss
We
Chris.
did,
Miss
we
Miss
did,
Fiji, I do appreciate your comments, but however, a direct misrepresentation of the truth. In none of these conversations did you um, speak about the details of this project as it is presented in this zone committee meeting. And I am only the voice of representing the Block Club right
I
now. I
understand
just
that,
think
Ms.
that that is a direct misrepresentation of the truth. Yes, I did receive a couple of emails to you, and we got the flyer. I think it was the day before yesterday when you canvassed the community with your flyers. So please, I understand the importance of your of this project. But again, we ask, when will systemic racism stop using the community
So,
development represents
Excuse me, this is Lori Wagner from the Law Department, and it is not appropriate during a meeting for somebody to break in when somebody else is talking. We have to follow certain procedures. Everybody has to testify under oath. You will have a chance to rebut when she's finished, but this is just wrong as far as interrupting other people's testimony.
I'm sorry, I do apologize.
Okay, have you concluded your remarks then, Famikos?
I just wanted to clarify, I did not at any point say that we shared plans with you via email, but that we did communicate with you and reach out to members of the community directly to communicate about the project, ask them what their wants were, and attempt to incorporate those wants into the final design of our project.
Could I ask one clarification question? It seems to have come up here, and that is, in your quote unquote community or public meeting, did you share the final design and final parking, et cetera, with the community, or is that something that had happened in terms of an evolution, if you will, and was not shared with the
project
community?
has evolved since it was originally presented to the community. Obviously, a part of that was because of COVID, and just the delays around that, which delayed the project by a whole year. But yes,
No.
the project has evolved.
No, my question was that, was there a public meeting that shared this design and this formula, if you will?
Outside of the formal process in terms of city planning and design review now.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? Okay, the appellant, do you want to answer the quote unquote questions, allegations that have been presented?
I mean, outside of, I think just to clarify and directly address, yes, we did have meetings with the community. Yes, we did communicate with them to ensure that they would be present for meetings like this one. Yes, we did attempt to incorporate their suggestions based off the community meetings that we had, including the potential for future district parking, which would help alleviate any parking that might happen on the street. I also just want to note that this building is also was designed from a transit-oriented development standpoint, and we really are marketing this very heavily towards millennial and Gen Z, which, as most folks may know, they are more likely to be carless households. And so the thought process is that the individuals that choose to live in this building, because there is not one-for-one parking, will intentionally want to have access to things like the Helpline in order to be able to commute.
You mentioned a quote unquote future parking expansion?
Yes.
With some land bank lots. How many additional spaces would that bring to the formula? And how far away is that physically, is that space as a result to the building itself?
Katie, do you mind taking that one?
Sure. It would be about 19 or so parking spaces on the east side, northeast of the site. There are a couple of land bank parcels that are available. I apologize to not have that site plan in front of us today.
Okay. City planning, do you want to weigh in, and what is city's planning's position on this? Maurice or somebody else from city planning?
Sorry, I was muted. First we had Deborah Lewis wanted to make another comment.
Okay, Deborah, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, there's a belief of who will occupy this development in the long term. I'm one of those old people. I remember the tenements. I'm very familiar with how things are hot for a moment and then they're not. And I'm also aware of how development in a thoughtful manner happens in that even CMHA along Huff and in this neighborhood developed housing that ultimately could be converted to condos, as they've been doing in California for years, because they respected the plan of bringing home ownership into the neighborhood. Again, I have to kind of fall back on the importance of supporting Black home ownership in this ground zero Huff neighborhood. And something was said that was very poignant this week and again on Friday, which calls for development, and there were representatives of real estate and banking institutions as well, in addition to Secretary Fudge and Senator Brown. And the poignant phrase for me that stands out to me was the phrase willingness to pivot. Yes, we have plans, but are we serving households who are underrepresented and underserved households? And so again, the idea that the neighborhood was fully informed, no, we were informed of this plan after the letter for this meeting. So for me, that's not timely. I just have to say it honestly, it's not timely to me. And there are other callers on from the neighborhood on the phone who didn't introduce themselves. So I'm speaking as I've spoken with them and they've spoken with me. Was the neighborhood involved? Were we
No.
listened to? The answer is no. I yield back to the chair.
All right, thank you. Have we heard from the council representative on this?
I have not
Liz?
received any letters from Councilman Jones.
Okay.
We have Cynthia Mumford with her hand raised again.
Cynthia, what say you? Cynthia, did you want to speak?
You're muted, ma'am.
Yeah, I
There you
did want to
go.
apologize for blurting in earlier, and no offense to anyone, but I just wanted to say this is very passionate because this is our home, and we are asking that we be able to, we as a neighborhood, I'm the block club president of this area, and we represent about 100 constituents within this area, 50 homes with each applying to, and everyone has, let's say 99% of the residents here has elected me to have a voice for them, and I have to have I have to represent appropriately. And again, no, the notifications, as Deborah Lewis said, came after this meeting. And no, we were not presented with parking and this type of plan, COVID or not. If given notice, like you were given to us today, you send us a letter, we will respond and we will be present. So if we, again, I just said this systemic racism, it just has to stop somewhere, or at least give us a voice as a community as to the design and the parking that we have to live with for the rest of our lives on the street.
All right, thank you for your comments. Board, you have any questions there?
Is it Lord?
Alana, Kelly?
Yeah, I don't know who we can guess run this by, maybe Mr. Riccardi or whatever, but the the appellant early on in the presentation said that due to the address, this building, which is why we have the small variances that are being asked for today. So if that's correct, that if this was a Chester Avenue address, will we even be here? So I'm not sure if anyone can corroborate that statement or not.
That would be how that would reflect upon the variance itself. So
Right.
I think the argument was that if it had a Chester Avenue address and the
Well, they
building was
changed it.
oriented toward
Put it
Chester
on
Avenue,
75th.
it might take away a couple of, one of the variances anyway, in terms of the parking being set back off of the building itself. If I understood that, I think that's what the testimony basically that was given to us by the appellant. My question here is, this seems to revolve around an issue of communication and transparency between the development team and the community making note that things had changed in a pretty dramatic, using the word dramatic, fashion in terms of the product that would be delivered to the neighborhood. And they would appreciate a say-so and a more respect to the community by perhaps adding another public session that allows these issues to be vetted so that, you know, there can be answers to questions like I just asked. Where's the satellite parking? You know, how many more spaces might it yield, et cetera. You know, with all that in thinking, perhaps it requires a postponement and the ability for the community to get together and continue the discussion prior to having us take action on the variances. What does my board members feel about that?
Mr. Chair, I am in agreement with Kelly that the initial statement by the appellant was that if this were Chester draft, we would not be looking at these variances. So I think that needs to be looked into. I'm familiar with this section of this corridor of Chester. I frequently pass it en route to appointments. So I think that's a question that needs to be addressed. It also is troubling that the final iteration of the project was not presented to the neighborhood. I'm well aware that there is an initiative to have ownership and development by people of color and women. And I know that Famicos has been working on different projects to that end. But I think there needs to be I think there needs to be more communication with the community. It troubles me that the council person has not been involved in this, so we have no communication from him or participation in today's meeting with him. So I would agree that we need a postponement. I think there's some issues to clear up. And I would move that we ask the appellant to request a postponement.
So this is Chris Shefton again. So just a couple quick things. The councilman has been participating throughout this process. My assumption of his lack of presence this morning is less about the project and more about his own availability. But if we need to get a letter from the councilman, I can work to secure that. Additionally, I just want to make sure that it's clear. We, as Famicos Foundation, when this project was in its infancy on our own without the councilman or the residents themselves approaching us to ask us for a meeting, as happens many times with developers, we approached the community and asked them to participate in the early iterations and ideation around this project. I also just want to make sure that it's clear that I myself am a Black woman and the director of real estate development for an organization that is run by a Black man and is 95% African American. We are committed to not only Black development, Black developers, and Black home ownership. Those are things that are essential to our mission for our existence for the last 51 years. And so we as an organization, these are the things that we were founded on and stand on to this day. So to have them question in this meeting is a little strange. Additionally, we are an organization that's committed to affordable housing, and over 85% of our portfolio is affordable housing. This is our first new construction ground up market rate building that we've ever done. And we're doing this in support of revitalization and housing diversification that needs to happen in Huff. Now we could talk about like the history of the Huff neighborhood and whether or not the single family residences that have been built in this corridor actually did what they originally wanted to achieve. And so after the riots and the years of redlining and other things that have happened to this community, to now have any development interest at all is such a success. And we're hoping that this project, again, as was mentioned by our architects, commended by both Design Review as well as City Planning Commission for its thoughtful design, and just overall presentation. And so we did communicate with the neighborhood. We do want to address their concerns, but I don't believe that we need to postpone the project in order to do that. We can continue to work with them offline in order to accommodate their requests.
All right.
Mr. Chair, could I make a statement,
Sir,
please?
Chairman.
Excuse me, everybody. Hold on. Hold. I had posed a question to the Board of the Zoning Appeals, and I want to continue that conversation in terms of whether or not, again, we're looking at and hearing the question and the opportunity to have another public meeting so that all issues can be vetted, et cetera, in a public forum. Councilman could be there, et cetera. A lot of this conversation, I think, still needs to happen. And I'm asking my fellow board members if they agree with that. And if so, I'd like to move for a postponement at this point.
Mr. Chairman, let me just let you know that Lori Wagner also has her hand raised, and Cynthia Mumford.
Okay. Lori, does this have anything to do with what I just stated or not?
It has to do with some statements that have been made about the law. And I just wanted to point out here that the HUD and fair housing organizations have recognized that exclusionary zoning is one of the biggest contributors to, racism in housing, and that through zoning that doesn't allow apartment buildings, that impacts disproportionately minority people. So I think as far as the discussions with regard to, what is and isn't supportive of housing initiative, it's important to remember that HUD, both during the present administration and the past administration, has recognized that insisting on single family zoning is not supportive of fair housing initiatives.
Okay, thank you very much for
I'm
that.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, that didn't have anything to do with your request for postponement, but.
Well, yeah, okay. Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm on the fence here. I'm trying to figure out. I really feel like just hearing the history that the project was completely put before the community, and that we are having a lot of conversations about parking. Parking is not a variance that's before us. And so the variances that are before us are very minor. And so that's what's making me on the fence about it, because I understand that you need to have transparency and that the neighborhood needs to know what's going on. But at the same time, we're the board of zoning. And so looking at the the variances here, they're very minor. And so part of me doesn't want to hold this up, and then part of me also wants, so I'm still trying to figure that out right now. So we can hear from other board members while I'm deliberating.
Okay, Marlene, what do you think?
What I think is that I want to understand what is really going on. Is there a big reason why they don't want to have a postponement and listen at what the other neighbors have to say, at least a month, 2 weeks or something, to try to get everybody together?
Right,
So,
exactly. I mean, having a public meeting doesn't necessarily mean it will come to a kumbaya moment, but at least it allows people that have questions to have those aired in a forum that people can discuss it, and there can be adequate response. And who knows, it may lead to a tweak or two in the design and in the product itself prior to us deliberating to give it any variances. As
Yes.
Kelly points out, the variances here are minor compared to some of the variances that we oftentimes have to deal with.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. I'm like, Kelly, okay, we're holding it up, but at least we are trying to work with the community on some of the stuff that we've heard. Okay.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chair, Chris from Famicos has put in the chat that they're happy to do a follow-up community meeting as a requirement. So I guess saying if we do decide to vote today, that we can make a requirement that they have this community meeting follow-up, and or if we just postpone it, it just seems like they're open to having the meeting. So I just wanted to.
Well, if that's good, if they're open to having the meeting, then I'd ask my fellow board members again on the issue of postponement. What say ye?
I believe I believe you made the motion to postpone, Mr.
Well,
Chair.
I did, yes.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if we had a second, but I think I think this is a project that Famicos has worked hard on. I know that they are, their mission is to bring affordable housing into the community. But there's a lot of pushback from the neighborhood for whatever reason. And so I think while these variances are minor, I think it's prudent to give the community an opportunity to speak their minds. So I would second that we go ahead and do a short postponement. Let's make sure that the councilman is, that we have communication from the councilman on the project as well.
Okay, I would definitely add that to my motion that we postpone it for community engagement, and with a big asterisk that the councilman should be included, make sure he's available to be able to meet with the community on this project. We have a second. Liz, can you call the roll, please?
Sure. Ms. Barnes?
Did you hear me? Yes?
No, I did not. Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Ms. Fay?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan, the soonest date we could get them back on the agenda is July 19th.
Okay, does that work for you guys, Famicos? I mean, can you get that meeting together by July 19th, before July 19th?
We sure can.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks everyone for participating, and good luck on the meeting and the conversation. By the way, you can talk to each other prior to the meeting as well to make sure that there's good information shared across the board. And I thank you all for participating, and we'll head on now to our second case of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right,
Thank
moving
you.
along to calendar number 21-084. Maddie LLC is appealing the building and housing violation, excuse me, number V21004859, issued to 12626 Lorraine Avenue. Maddie LLC owner appeals under the authority of Section 76-6 of the Charter of the City of Cleveland and Section 329.02D of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances to dispute the decision of Building and Housing to issue violation number V21004859 at 12626 Lorraine Avenue. Said order cites nonconformance with Code Section 327.02C, which states that no premises shall be occupied by any new use without a certificate of occupancy. Also, the owner is cited for noncompliance with Code Section 357.14, which states that nothing shall be erected, stored, or maintained beyond the established front building line. Filed May 10th, 2021.
Thank you very much. With everyone for this case, kindly raise your right hand. I'm going to read a statement. Again, I'm looking for a response of I do with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do, Melissa Miller.
Okay. Anyone else?
I do, Bill Bartley.
Okay. Anyone else?
Excuse me, this is Attorney Mark Shear. I just want to instruct Mr. Carino to raise your right hand and indicate that you do.
I do, Nick Carino.
All righty. Anyone else? Hearing none, we move on to history and the legal standard. Actually, we don't have the history in this case, do we?
No.
Legal standard. Go ahead, Lori.
Sorry, didn't unmute. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, appellant is appealing an administrative decision. The standard of review to be applied is whether the administrative decision was illegal, arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, or unsupported by the preponderance of substantial, reliable, and probative evidence. If the appellant fails to meet this burden, the administrative decision must be affirmed.
All right, Maurice, remind us again on the issue at hand here, if you could.
On this one, I only do the zoning, the ones for city planning. We don't get involved in these. So, and actually, I did not have any information on this. So I think Ms. Kukla might be better to sum this one up.
Ms. Kukla, seems like there's a lot of cars parked on a parcel here.
To the chairman, I think the appellant would be, or the appellant's attorney would be best at explaining the appeal at this point.
Okay. Shall we hear from the appellant or the appellant's attorney? Tell us what the situation is.
Hi, this is Attorney Mark Shear, representing Maddie LLC. I have to admit, I have a hard time understanding why these folks were even cited. So I'm taking some guesses here as to why the citations were issued. I did have a conversation with the building department official who issued the citation. My understanding is that perhaps, if I understand it correctly, there was a concern about some cars being parked, I guess, on an area between the sidewalk and a fence. I represent the landlord here. This property has always been a car dealership. As far as I can tell, it's just a matter of some of these cars being parked in that little area. We've asked the tenant to move those vehicles. As far as I know, those vehicles have been moved, and the tenant has been instructed to no longer park vehicles there. Now, if somebody comes along and parks a vehicle there, obviously neither the tenant nor the landlord have any control over whether or not a customer or somebody else parks a vehicle in that area. But that seems to be a parking violation, not a building code or a zoning issue. So other than that, we don't understand why we have this citation or the violation. So we're asking this board to dismiss it. And quite frankly, my first appeal, following the instructions on the notice of violation, was to the building department, who then sent it over to you good folks. So it seems to be kind of a confusing issue, and nobody really seems exactly to be sure of as to why the notice of violation was issued and exactly what is required.
Can you ask, can you answer a question for me? Is this use on this parcel that of a used car dealership?
Absolutely. It has been a used car dealership.
Okay.
Time
Okay,
immemorial.
yeah.
So
A yes or
Yeah,
no
go ahead.
would be good. Second thing would be, do you have a certificate of occupancy that allows that use and recognizes it as a legal use?
yes,
You have a certificate of occupancy for that parcel?
yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Kelly. Just quick, is there anyone from that issued the citation here? So maybe we can understand
Yes.
exactly
Yes.
what the.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to try to get your attention that Bill Bartley, who I believe is from Building and Housing,
Okay.
can speak to this, and he's got his hand
Perfect.
raised.
Mr. Bartley, fill us in.
Good morning, Chairman. Bill Bartley, Cleveland Building and Housing. I was to fill out the deed. I was dispatched to the property in February 2021, February 19, 2021, for a complaint about illegal use and extending the use of the property beyond the into the area of where they're parking the cars. I was there. You can see the photos there I took on February 19, 2021. You can see two issues there. First, you have the landscaping or screening that's non-conforming to the approval, which was done in the 90s. Certificate of occupancy was issued for this property on August 26, 1999. However, it does not. The fence does not conform with the original approval. Plans should be should have been sent along. And then additionally, the other violation in the picture below, you see I took on February 19th, is the storage of the vehicles that they have for sale and beyond the setback, right on the public right of way there. You also see a photo of the service of the violation. And then there is documents that was sent up that right there showing the original approval of the barricade landscape screening that does not conform with what is there today.
So your violation notice basically says to them that you have a legal use, but were supposed to design the site in a specific manner that showed where the cars would be parked, where landscaping would be placed, and there hasn't been any of those improvements made. Is that the case here, basically?
That is correct. In addition to, like I said, taking the product for sale and moving it beyond that screening and selling it in the setback.
Okay.
That's the basis of the violation.
So, Mr. Chair, the bill. So they are parking cars in the setback. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Parking.
Okay, thank you.
So to the appellant or his lawyer, how do you respond to that testimony?
Mr. Chairman, we also have Rick Riccardi with his hand raised.
Mr. Riccardi, okay, we'll allow his testimony, but consider what your answer would be, appellant. Mr. Riccardi, go ahead.
I just also wanted to add that this has been made an urban form overlay district, and an open sales lot is not a permitted use in that district. It's specifically prohibited. Now, of course, this is a legal use, but with the passage of that ordinance, it became a legal non-conforming use. So when you have an expansion of that 15-foot area where you're now adding cars, it becomes an expansion of a legal non-conforming use. That is also an aspect of the violation notice. Thank you.
Okay.
I would also state that the cars may be moved there today, but the nature of a violation notice is that they were in violation on the day that this notice was issued, as the inspector will state. So if they're not there today, it doesn't mean the violation notice is bad or should be dismissed, because the violation notice refers to a specific date. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out, this is Maurice Rowland, City Planning. I took these photos that are on the screen here last week on Tuesday. As you can see, there are cars parked all in the setback area. Some of them have no license plates on them, so I would imagine they're dealership-owned cars. But I just wanted to let you know that that was happening as recent as the 15th of June. Thank you. And we have Melissa Miller with her hand raised.
Yes, Melissa, please go ahead.
Thank you, Melissa Miller, Bel Air Puritas Development Corporation. This has and continues to be a problem in this neighborhood from this particular dealership. Since taking office, Councilman Casey has changed the zoning on Lorraine Avenue and added the urban form overlay district. And he has extended a design review district to the entire portion of Ward 16 in an effort to improve the look and appeal of Lorraine Avenue as a place to do business. Bel Air Puritas Development Corporation has worked with several Lorraine Avenue businesses on improving their storefronts recently through storefront renovation, as well as working to bring new businesses to the commercial corridor. And the current appearance of the car lot located at 12626 Lorraine does not in any way further the goals of the council person, the neighborhood, or the development corporation. And what we are trying to achieve on Lorraine Avenue. This does continue to be a problem, despite the fact that they were cited. We would like this to obviously end, as well as go back to conforming to what the certificate of occupancy originally said, which would be to have that landscape buffer reinstalled. And to the lawyer's point, with regards to this being a parking or a traffic issue, not a building and housing issue, this is on private property, not public property. Therefore, it becomes a building and housing issue, not a police matter or a parking issue to that point.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
I'm sorry, just one more thing. Councilman Casey is not in town today. So he has asked me to just, on his behalf, express that these are also, in addition to the Development Corporation sentiments, the complaints from the neighborhood sentiments, these are very much his sentiments to this issue as well.
Thank you again. And thank you, Maurice, for reminding us that really the issue at hand, as far as we're concerned, is on the day in question was the citation a reflection of the conditions that were not being met in terms of the certificate of occupancy. It's not we're not looking at a variance here. We're not, that happens on another forum. It's whether or not the city was correct in their citation here in terms of it being a reflection of the condition of the property. And if so, the city was not arbitrary or capricious in citing the owner of the property. Board, going in, please.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. The inspector provided, pictures of what happened in February when they got cited, and then when Maurice went out, clearly it's still happening even now. So I feel like at the moment of time in which the violation was issued, it was a correct violation to issue. So, and that's what's before us today. I agree. So.
All right. Anyone else on the board want to make any statement? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'm in agreement as well.
Can we have a motion then and the second?
Excuse me, am I entitled to rebut any of that before you make any kind of a motion and move forward on whether or not you're going to continue to allow the violation to stand?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I submitted some documentation, a pretty detailed letter in terms of what the ordinances or how the ordinances read and why those ordinances are completely inapplicable. Also at issue here is a requirement that the property be approved by the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Any car dealership has to be approved by the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. The property has to have certain types of fencing, has to have certain types of criteria that the property meets. And if we go about the business of just changing it willy-nilly without approval from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, then the Bureau of Motor Vehicles is going to have a problem with what we've done with that property, what the car dealership has done with that property. So it seems to be completely inappropriate for this violation to be issued, for the notice of violation to be issued when there's another a governmental actor who has to approve the property, and continues to indicate that this property is an appropriate place and format for the operation of a car dealership. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board, again, do I hear a motion here?
Mr. Chairman, we have Lori Wagner from the Law Department. I
I was
imagine
just
would like
about
to
to-
rebut this.
Great. I
Yep,
was just about to
ask
ask.
Lauren. Yeah.
Yep, me too. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lauren.
You're muted, Lori.
Lori, unmute, please.
Sorry.
There you
I said that this is not a question of whether they have a right to have a motor vehicle operation there, that is grandfathered in. It's a matter of local zoning as to whether they can park within the right of way. And so the argument that the attorneys seem to be making that somehow having a state license preempts any local zoning is not obviously the case here. So I needed to clarify that.
Thank you. Go back to the motion. I believe there was a motion made, or no?
I was about to, and then we were interrupted. So, Mr. Chair, I think the city has proven that at the time of the violation notice, there was a violation, and so they were not arbitrary or capricious by issuing it. So I move that we uphold the city's violation for calendar number 21-084.
Second.
Can you call the roll, Liz?
Yes, sir. Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Bates?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Calendar 21-84 is denied. The decision of the building and housing official has been upheld. It'll be ratified next week, and we will send you a letter.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the next case.
Take care.
Thank you. Our third case today, Mr. Chair, is calendar number 21-085 at 2462 West 7th Street. Timothy Ridgely, owner, proposes to construct a 3-story addition in a rear yard deck in a B1 two-family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record.
Thank you.
Mr. Donovan, if I could interrupt.
Absolutely.
Councilman Polensek is present. If there's any way that we could reshuffle the hearings or the cases so that we can take his case next. I believe that he has a time conflict.
Okay. We can do that. Go ahead. Can you put the next case on the screen, and we'll have Alana read it?
Sure.
So we have, which is the Lakeshore Boulevard? Okay.
Yes, Lakeshore Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
To accommodate Councilman Polensek, we move on to calendar number 21-094 at 15609 Lakeshore Boulevard. Cole W.G., Cleveland, Ohio, LLC, owner, proposes to establish use as a plasma collection center in an E5 local retail business district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record.
All right. Well, everyone for this case, kindly raise your right hand. Again, I'm going to make a statement. I'm looking for a response of I do with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole, and nothing but the truth? The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name?
I will. Cynthia Brookins, Greater Collinwood Development.
Okay.
Councilman Michael D. Polensek, Ward 8.
All righty.
I do.
Anyone else?
I do. Aaron Renshaw with Immunotech.
Okay. Anyone else? Last call? Hearing none, let's go to history and the legal standard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property was originally zoned one family in 1929, since 1929. In 1970, it was changed to the current zoning district. The most pertinent evidence here, Mr. Chairman, is in the calendar 93-216. A variance was granted to erect a 1-story masonry retail pharmacy and parking lot at this site. Mr. Chairman, you may also remember that there was a request for an identical variance for this address, and it was withdrawn earlier this year. And that's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, appellant is requesting a use variance and area variances from the fence regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the use variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will result in an unnecessary hardship, particular to the property, such that there will be no economically feasible use of the property without the variance, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you, Lori. Maurice, can you give us a synopsis of what we're looking at here in terms of the variance requests?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. For this one, we have two variances. We have a use variance. First of all, the proposed use is not permitted in local retail. It is first permitted in general retail. And then we also have a fence permit, fence variance. They're proposing to install a 6-foot decorative metal fence in the front yard. And as you know, this is limited to 4 feet. So those are the two variances.
All right. Who's going to be the spokesperson for the request?
I will. This is Aaron Renshaw.
Go ahead, Aaron. Please give us your testimony and try to focus in on the issues of the variance itself.
Yes, sir. Yes, so we are asking that the zoning code be changed in order for us to open up a plasma collection center here at 15609 Lakeshore Boulevard. As of right now, it is, as stated earlier, it is currently not zoned for this use. We are also asking that we put a fence, a 6-foot fence along East 156th Street here with a gate at the back apron in order to allow for shipping access for our vehicles that pick up and drop off supplies. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Next slide, please. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me go over this. So we also want to maintain. We also obviously plan on maintaining all of the landscaping near and around the site, as well as maintaining the signage, the building itself, the parking lot with striping, and also tearing down this covered drive-through area that would not be any part of what we do during our business. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, continue on with the next slide. Okay, so we are Immunotech. We are a biopharmaceutical company that collects the water portion of the blood, which is plasma. Next slide. So this is on this page here. There are over. This is the key leadership within our business of Immunotech. There are over 200 hours of plasma operations and building maintenance experience by the individuals listed on this page. Immunotech has a very high standard of how our centers are maintained and operated, a much higher standard than any other competitor in the industry. I've worked for this competitor. I've worked for 2 other competitors in the industry for over 23 years. And Immunotech has by far the highest standards of building maintenance and operational management. So this group is very proud of what we do and maintain and manage our operations very strictly. Next slide, please. So what does Immunotech do? What does a plasma collection center do? So we are a biopharmaceutical company or a biotech company. We're committed to the safe collection of human blood plasma. Human blood plasma is the water portion of your blood, which contains proteins and hemoglobins. We take that water portion, that unit that we collect that contains those proteins and hemoglobins and ship them to a pharmaceutical company that goes through a process called fractionation to make plasma protein therapies as well as vaccines. So many of the medications that we use are for burn victims, hemophiliacs, which is probably our largest donor or patient base, biological products, albumin, and other specialty drugs. are also on the front lines of providing the raw material that produces the COVID-19 vaccine. So without a business like ours, the COVID-19 vaccine could not be developed. So we are a heavy part of that process as well. The facilities that you'll see as we go through the slide deck are state of the art. They're very clean, very well maintained facilities, especially through Immunotech. We do have to go through strict licensure by the FDA as well as the European Union and any other regulatory authorities that purchase our product. The process that we go through is called plasmapheresis. It's an automated process, which, as I stated earlier, takes the whole blood from the donor, and we separate that. We separate the plasma from that, and only take the water portion of the blood, which is the plasma. We do return cells back to the donor with a mixture of anticoagulant. And one very important point here is the screening and testing that every single donor has to go through every time they donate. They go through a rigorous screening and testing protocol every single time to make sure that they are healthy individuals and are suitable to donate. We do not accept everybody. You have to have a permanent residence. You cannot have done any drugs. You cannot have any tattoos within the last year. So we do go through a very strict screening protocol every single time that the donor donates. And then once they donate that unit of plasma, every single unit of plasma is tested by an outside company called Qualtex. And every single, you name the test that we perform on these units, we do it. So these are very safe units, and the donors are in good health before they can donate. Next slide, please. So the community impact. So a typical center will employ anywhere between 25.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to interrupt but sir, we really just need to get to what the variances are. We don't need to go into super detail about the center. So
okay. I'll touch on the community impact, and then we'll move through the other slides very quickly. So we do employ anywhere between 25 to 30, sometimes 35 employees. Immunotech provides excellent opportunities for individuals wanting to obtain experience in the medical industry, either from an entry-level position like a medical screener, plasma processor, general technician, or even a skilled position like a phlebotomist, registered nurses, and even physicians. So Immunotech does provide on-the-job training and continued training to keep those skills sharp. So the economic impact of a typical center in the community is estimated at approximately $2.5 million annually. Next slide, please. So our typical hours of operation, initially, you'll see we'd like to be open from Tuesday through Saturday, beginning at 10 a.m. and closing at 4 p.m. And then once the center begins to mature, we'd like to expand those days and hours from Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We have been requested that we do not keep the center open during hours where it's going to be dark, just from a safety perspective. So here's a typical center, what it's going to look like from the outside. This is actually in Cleveland, Tennessee, so a little bit smaller community, but very similar to the building that we're going to be redeveloping here. Next slide. Here's an example of our pylon sign. Next slide. Again, duplicate slide, I apologize. Next slide. So here's a larger ground up build, but the building that we're going to be renovating is for Walgreens, and it will look very similar to this. Next slide. Here's an overhead view with ample parking, ample lighting. Next slide. Here's a typical lobby where the donors can wait if there is a wait. Typically, there's not a wait for our centers as we get the donors through quite quickly. Here's another example of the center. It's clean and very well maintained. We are paperless, so there is no paper in the center. So that is another level of cleanliness that we maintain. Next slide. Again, another example. This is behind the scenes. This is where the actual screeners are. So again, very well maintained. Again, just a wider shot of that. This is a plasma processing area. This is the donor floor area. This is where the bulk of the center is going to look like. We're going to have 36 beds in this center, but typically only 24 to 30 beds will be used at any one time. We generally do not have a full center of donors. This is our plasma processing area with state-of-the-art freezer technology. Again, just another shot of that. This is our shipping area. This is where we actually prepare the shipments. This is a shot of our state-of-the-art freezers. These freezers get down to negative 40 degrees. There's a technician operating the center or operating the freezer. Example of a storage room. And this is an example of a physician's office. So we had a meeting on May 8th with the city. A meeting was held on May 8th with the residential group, and we discussed the following concerns. And I believe we have satisfied all concerns brought forth by the group. So we discussed reduced operating hours. We discussed hiring a security guard during those operating hours. We discussed and agreed to a professional-looking facility, of course, to include landscaping, free of debris and trash, well-maintained parking lot that's paved and striped, regular pickup, maintained exterior and interior, as well as signage, well-lit parking, as well as building parameter. And then loitering was one of the hot topics that we engaged. So we need our facilities to be inviting and approachable. Leadership and security teams do not allow loitering. Also, our process dictates that loitering not occur as people go through the process very quickly. And also, Immunotech is very committed to community engagement. We want to be a part of the community. We want to be a very positive part of the community. And part of that is the community engagement we've always agreed to in any community that we go into. Next slide. And that is, that is everything I have. Any questions or concerns?
Before I open it up, I have just a couple quick questions. One, do you have any facilities in the Cleveland area that are operable right now?
We do not.
And two, how many quote unquote customers, if we can use that term, do you anticipate on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, we can anticipate anywhere between, well, when we first start operating, you can anticipate anywhere between 20 to 40. And as the center matures at full maturity, you can expect anywhere between 80 to about 100 donors per day.
Okay. All right, let's go to the other folks who are here and have been sworn in for testimony.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure, Lori Wagner, was your hand raised from previously, from the previous case? Or did you have to?
Lori, are you there?
To say?
I'm sorry, I have nothing to say. It was
Okay.
raised from our previous.
No problem. Just want to make sure we're not missing anybody. Go ahead, Mr. Donovan.
Well, I'm just calling out if anyone wants to now ask any questions or provide any commentary. We know the councilman's on the call. We will usually let him go last. So is there anyone else from the community here that wants to ask any questions or weigh in?
I'm sorry.
Good. Do you want
Go
to
ahead,
ask
ma'am.
Was there somebody from the community?
Yeah. Do you want to ask a question or weigh in on any aspect of this? Perhaps not. Perhaps it'll only be the councilman. Anybody from the Local Development Corporation?
Yes. I wanted to let, if there was a resident, go first. And this is Cynthia Brookins from Greater Collinwood Development.
Okay.
And we are very much in favor of this new business coming into our neighborhood. I've been working with them for almost a year, maybe over a year now. I have visited similar establishments. There's one in Mentor, and then there's another one in Euclid. And I did drive by there, and then I also called the city of Mentor and the city of Euclid to see if they had any complaints regarding any type of people standing outside or just anything, and there were no complaints. And each time I did drive by the facility, there weren't anybody standing outside. There were no lines. It was a very nice establishment, like this one is going to be here. So we are very much in favor of this business being in our neighborhood, and it'll be a nice look to the neighborhood to add to it. We are in the process of a couple of other businesses in the area renovating their exterior also. And a couple new businesses are coming in, so this will be a nice addition to the neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else from the neighborhood or community prior to asking the councilman? City planning, do you want to weigh in on the city's response?
I'd like to hear what the councilman has to say.
All righty, Councilman Polensek, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, I was hesitant because I knew there were some residents that had expressed, I saw emails going back and forth, so I knew there were some residents that wanted to comment, and I don't know if they've sent anything in, if there's anything, any emails or anything that they sent to Ms. Kukla or not. If there are, I would hope that those would be read into the record as well. Mr. Chairman, I and board members, as has been indicated, we met with the appellant at the site. We discussed in great detail perceptions, concerns, et cetera, about plasma centers and probably maybe more misinformation that we had received than real information. But the fact of the matter is this building has been vacant, I think, going on maybe 3 years now, maybe longer. I can't I can't recall the exact date that Walgreens closed. It's been an eyesore on the street. It's not been maintained properly or adequately by the present owner. Litter, debris, high bushes, illegal dumping behind the building, and yet it's on a prominent street in our community, Lakeshore Boulevard. So we've been greatly concerned. So we looked at the proposal, we've weighed it, we've talked to neighbors, and it came clear to me after listening to the neighbors that they are in support of it based on the provisions that have been put forth, such as the landscaping must be maintained at all times, exterior lighting, exterior cameras, security cameras, that the back gate, the back driveway, we had originally discussed that it be taken out, but they're indicating that they will put up a gate, which we can live with as long as that gate is closed after when the building establishment closes, that gate is closed as well, and that on the east side of 156th Street, that it be an ornamental fence, black ornamental fence, to just guarantee the safety and peace of mind for the residents who live on 156th Street north of Lakeshore Boulevard. Again, the building has not been maintained, so we're looking forward to Immunotech maintaining this property, sprucing it up, making it look very presentable, and running a first-class medical facility out of it, which will hopefully add to the appearance of the community, create additional jobs in the neighborhood, and maybe lead to support for other businesses that are there by the customers or people who will go to that location. So weighing it, we all came to the realization with what's going on in the retail market today, that this was our best efforts. This was the best effort put forward to reutilize this building. Our fear was that it was just going to continue to sit there and decline. So I'm here to support it on behalf of the majority of the residents that have been engaged in this process.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Now we'll go back to the city planning. Maurice?
Yeah, Maurice Rowland, City Planning. Yeah, we concur
And
with
Maurice,
the councilman.
sorry to interrupt, but while you're talking, can you go back to the slide with the actual variances on there? We got caught up in everything else and I forgot what they are.
Actually, you know what? I don't. Inadvertently, they're not on here. The two variances.
Oh, no wonder.
And before I forget, person with the initial CD has raised their hand and they wanted to speak, and I'm not sure if that's a community person. I want to make sure they get a chance to speak. The variances were that this is not permitted in local retail, which is the current zoning. It's first permitted in general retail. So it's really just the next zoning district away from that. And then the other issue was the 6-foot high decorative metal fence that goes in the front yard across the front of the building. Those are the two variances.
Thank you.
All right. Is somebody, CD, would you like
Yes.
to weigh
Could-
in?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, hi. So my name is Cheryl Davis and I have a home in the Beulah Park neighborhood, which is adjacent to this property across the street on 156. And several members of the community did sign a letter of support. We met with Mr. Renshaw and his colleague, Mr. Williams, and we went over a number of issues that were of concern. And I wanted to add that they have been very responsive to our concerns, very respectful of the needs of the community. And the items that they did agree to are outlined in the letter that was submitted to the Planning Commission, to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and to the councilman. And we would like that read, doesn't have to be read into the record, but we would like it to be a part of the record going forward. And again, thanks to Mr. Renshaw for his willingness to meet with us and to listen to the concerns.
Thank you very much. Liz, do you have said letter in your possession, and could we have some bullet points to include into any resolution of support?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have have a letter. It was signed by Cindy Barber, Cheryl Davis, Rick Harrington, Christina Mosier, and Amy Sparks. The bullet points that I would first point out are the ones that the appellant had mentioned in the slide that he would agree to regarding hours of operation, hiring security, repaving the parking lots, maintaining the landscaping, keeping the parking lot well lit, removing the drive-through at the rear, and installing a decorative functional fence up to the driveway apron closer to Lakeshore, which will further enhance the landscaping. There were other items that I'm not sure that we can make part of the resolution. First one will be Immunotech will work with the community leaders to identify, hire, and train workers from the neighborhood. Employees will be paid a minimum of $12.50 an hour and will be full-time and eligible for benefits. That's item 1 on the community agreement. Number 3, Immunotech site director will be engaged member of the Collinwood community and serve as an active member of the board of local nonprofit organizations. Immunotech will fund at a meaningful level a community relations budget to provide financial support for community events such as Waterloo Arts Festival. The director will work with Councilman Polensek and community leaders to annually determine how the funds will be distributed. Immunotech committed to the neighbors that as the business grows, so will the fund. And those are the only other 2 items that I don't believe that we can make part of the resolution. If you want to ask that question directly to Ms. Wagner to see if that's something we could add, if those are items we can add. But to the neighbors' concern, it definitely will be part of the public record. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Lori, do you want to weigh in on that? I do think some of those are probably a little bit out of bounds for a Board of Zoning Appeals.
Right. It's part of the record, and it's good goals to aspire to and to reach. Probably not appropriate in a zoning context as far as who you're hiring and where they live, that type of thing. So I think it would be better just to have those as part of the record, but not part of the motion.
And concentrating again on the variance language itself, the fence height, and the use of just the use itself, I would entertain a motion from someone.
Mr. Chairman, just one question I had of the applicant, and maybe Ms. Kukla. Do we have a cut sheet of the proposed ornamental fence?
We do not as of right now, but we are currently working on that.
I guess my only comment would be that, we normally don't like to have a 6-foot fence along the front of the building. But if it's going to be a very open ornamental fence, I guess I would not have so much of a problem with that. But I don't have a cut sheet, so I don't know what the fence actually looks like.
Appellant, are you guys looking at a wrought iron looking type fence there?
Yeah, I think it was requested that it's going to be a black wrought iron type ornamental fence.
Yeah.
And we are willing to provide any type of fence that is recommended by the board. So that's not a problem at all.
Okay,
We just
that's
need to- we
fine.
just need to- The key point for us in the fence, we just need to make sure that there's a gate that does open up at that back apron on 156th Street. So that's our only.
So let's include in our motion the installation of a 6-foot fence, including a gate that's operable in the rear of the property for functional purposes. Well, I'm looking, huh?
Mr. Chair, to the appellant, will that be a manual or motor operated gate?
No, it'll be motor operated.
Okay,
and
like a
only be-
security gate.
Security, and it'll only be opened when a truck is exiting the premises. So that's an exit only. It's not going to be an entryway. And anytime a truck is not exiting, it will be closed. Our trucks, once we get to center maturity, we have 2 trucks per week that come, one to drop off supplies and one to pick up our plasma to be sent to a fractionator. And it's literally only open for about 10 to 15 seconds at a time.
All right. It seems as though we have reached a conclusion here. Would somebody like to try to bundle that into a motion?
Mr. Chair, could I ask Maurice to put up the slide that had the accommodations the appellant had made for the community with the hours of operation? And there we go. Okay. So I would motion that we go ahead. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat. I would motion that for case number 21-094, that we go ahead and approve the variances with the support of the Community Development Corporation and Councilman Polensek. As part of the motion, stating that the business hours initially will be Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And approximately 6 months into operation, the hours will probably be expanded to Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. There will be security cameras on site and necessary excuse me, and necessary trash and debris collection taken into consideration. Also, with regard to the fence, if the appellant would supply us a cut sheet of the fence, understanding that it's going to be 6 feet, it's going to be black, it's going to be metal, in appearance looking like a decorative wrought iron fence with approximately a 50% opacity, and that it will have a motorized gate that will be in operation intermittently, but most of the time remain closed.
Yes, I will provide that cut sheet to you as quickly as I can get it.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in on these other conditions that were in the letter that we received. There were a couple that Ms. Faith might want to add to the motion.
Yes, by all means, please do.
Immunotech committed to repaving the parking lot and that ensuring that it remains in good condition. The Immunotech will maintain the landscaping and setting a standard for other businesses in the community. Immunotech will keep the parking lot well lit, and that Immunotech will remove the drive-through at the rear of the building and clean and maintain dumpster area, install a gate, and limit the north driveway apron where the pharmacy drive-through formerly existed. I believe that's the area that the appellant wants to put the gate. So those items regarding lighting, paving and draining, and landscaping and removing the drive-through as well as the building, the drive-through portion. Those things, if Ms. Faith would be fine with adding those to the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Kukla. I appreciate you chiming in with those additional items. Yes, we would include those as read in the motion.
All right, do I have a second?
I second.
Call the roll.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Ms. Britt,
Yes.
Ms. Bay,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Calendar 21-94 is granted conditionally. It'll be ratified once we receive that cut sheet, and we will send you a letter after that point.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, guys. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I believe our last case, maybe?
Next to last,
All right.
calendar number 21-085. We're circling back to that at 2462 West 7th Street. Timothy Ridgely, owner, proposes to construct a 3-story addition and a rear yard deck in a B1 two-family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record.
All right, everyone, for this case, will you kindly raise your right hand? I'm going to read a statement. I'm looking for a response of I do with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do, Tim Ridgely.
I do, Stephanie Nord.
Anyone else? Hearing none, we move on to history and the legal standard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property was originally zoned general retail in 1929. In 1961, it was changed to two-family. And the records room I only found that in 1941, a permit was issued to enlarge a basement. In 1971, a permit was issued to add a 1-story patio. There is one variance on file in calendar 68-220. A variance was granted to maintain 2 dwelling units on the site. And then in the more recent history in our Acela system, we found that in 2012, permit was issued to re-roof the building on the property. And that's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, appellant is requesting an area variance from the side yard regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the area variance, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variance will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you. Maurice, remind us what we have to deal with.
Yeah, we have 2 variances on this one. One of them, the first one is a side yard variance. I might also point out that this would be an extension of an existing side yard, so it would just be adding to the nonconformity. And of course, the second one is the fact that this is an enlargement of a nonconforming use.
All right. Who's going to be the spokesperson for the project?
I think me, Tim Ridgely.
Okay. Try to hone in on the 2 variance requests in your testimony, but take it away.
Okay, I'll do my best. Thank you guys for taking the time. I'll try and keep it brief. We are looking to extend our house and add a garage where currently there's a pile of dirt and mulch in the Tremont area. All of the houses here are pretty close and tight together. The addition that we're looking at is in keeping with the neighborhood. Our neighbors just one house over have a like garage that extends out towards the street. So we're going to be lined up with them. And yeah, I mean, the house is too close to the side of the property line as is, and we're just going to extend it straight out. So that's roughly what we're looking to do.
All right. Is there anyone here that would like to testify on behalf of the project? Anyone opposed? All right, city planning, what say you?
Yeah, Maurice Rowland, City Planning. We support these variances. Mr. Ridgely is correct. You know, normally we don't like front-facing, front-loaded garages. However, there are numerous other ones of almost an exact same style as his that he is proposing on the street. So that's fairly consistent. We would request that you, because it is a front-facing, front-loaded garage, we would request that there be some glass in the garage doors.
All right, appellant, can you agree to that tweak?
Sure.
All righty.
Yes.
No council person with us, no development corporation person. Kind of unusual. All right.
I don't see anybody.
Board, any questions, comments?
Only that, given this neighborhood, such variances are fairly common for us, and as city planning stated, that, the precedent has been set with other houses in the adjacent area as far as the garage. So, with the, stipulation that the appellant is in agreement to include glass in the, garage door, I would move that we go ahead and approve calendar 21-085.
Second.
Let's call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, before I call the roll, do we want a new drawing for that, or are we fine with the discretion of the appellant?
Drawings meaning the windows in the garage door?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, please give us a drawing of how many windows, et cetera, you'd put into the garage door itself as part of our ratification process.
Mr. Chair, I think we could probably have a cut sheet of the garage door that the appellant is selecting, showing the amount of glass that's in it. Would that
Sounds
be-
reasonable to me.
Would that be okay?
Sounds good.
All right. So with that stipulation added to the motion, I move that we go ahead and approve.
All right, Ms. Barnes? Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Faith?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Calendar 21-85 is granted conditionally. We will hold ratification until we receive that cut sheet, and that'll be ratified, and we will send you a letter after that point.
All right. I think it's the last case.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to case number 5, our final one for the day. Calendar number 21-088 at 2060 West 20th Place. Urban Development Clee LLC owner proposes to erect a 3-story single-family residence with an attached 3-car attached garage in a F1 multifamily residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record.
All right. Well, everyone for this case, kindly raise your right hand. I'm making a statement afterwards. Looking for a response of I do with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do, and my name is Haley Novak.
All right. Anyone else?
Just me today, I believe.
And my name is Daniel Keeper.
All righty. Anyone else? Hearing none, we move on to history and legal standard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. I didn't find any records in our records room. There were no variances in file and nothing of note in the more recent history. Over to you, Ms. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the garage placement, minimum lot area, rear yard, and side yard encroachment requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Maurice, remind us again of the exacting language of the variances that are being requested.
Sure. So we have 4 variances here. The first one is the front-loaded garage variance. They are proposing a front-loaded garage in the front half of the lot. I just want to point out real quickly that this is pretty much this has been treated as an alley. There are a lot of other front-loaded garages on this street, and we actually approved a house almost identical to that, which is the bottom right picture. in the showing up on the screen. We have a minimum lot area variance, the rear yard variance, and then they're also proposing a window well for access to the basement and an air conditioner also in the side yard.
All right, who's going to speak on behalf of the project?
I will. My name is Haley Novak. I'm with the architect, Horton Harper Architects, speaking on behalf of the developer and the homeowner or future homeowners of this single-family house. If you'd like, I can just run through the project really quick. Again, kind of highlighting the areas that touch on the variances.
Please try to focus in. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, this is the zoning document we submitted. It's a little more technical document that we provided for today. But to give you an idea, we have we're proposing a single family house here, again on West 20th Place, which was just mentioned, is really more of an alley in this neighborhood. The house itself is 2 stories with a, I guess, up at the front of the, I should say it's 3 stories, but the 3rd story is set back from the front facade. We also have a 1-story entry that's on the very front facade that kind of blocks view to the front-loaded garage doors, which is one of the variances we have. Those, I think the way we've set up the design, this is a great one to show it, is we have that front-loaded garage door. However, it is set back behind that 1-story entryway, and that garage is a lower, more in context with the neighboring house that you can see there to the north. Again, these elevations show that front-loaded garage doors are very typical for this West 20th Place, since it is more of an alley. There really isn't the potential for rear-loaded garage doors for these homes on this side of the alley. Another one of the variances mentioned was the window well in the back. We've actually reduced that. It was going to be an egress well for a basement bedroom. However, those plans have changed, so it will just be a smaller window to provide light now into the basement. And the AC being positioned at the rear of the house is intentional to keep it away from the more visible side of the side yards and away from the existing neighbor to the north. There is a future development plan by the same developer to the west of this property, and which is now going through the city approval process. And so having the AC there is kind of contextual with that development, which will likely also have an AC unit or 2 kind of facing the rear of this house. To address the issue of the garage door, this project did go in front of the Housing Design Review Committee, and we were asked to break up a 2-car garage door into 2 single-car garage doors, and we're asked to provide glazing on 50% of the door. So that is represented in our updated renderings here. The Design Review Board also requested that we add an overhang to the front entry doors. A little hard to see in this view, but in some of our other renderings, it's more visible here, just to create more of a covered entryway and kind of bring more attention to that front door. This project was also presented to Tremont West Economic Development Committee, as well as the Block Club, and there were no objections at those meetings. The site will be landscaped. We've included a landscape plan in this presentation. I don't think we have to get into the details of that. I guess if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. Did you say that the window well and the air conditioner are now in the rear yard?
That is where they have been shown. However, the window well has just been reduced in size since our
So-
initial zoning
So,
review.
Mr. Riccardi, that would not require a variance then, correct? For though number 4 would not be needed.
No, apparently not.
Okay, so number 4 is stricken. The window well and the air conditioner are not in the side yard. So then we're only going for 3 variances. Mr. Chairman, we have Daniel Kiefer and Elizabeth Kukla with their hands raised.
Okay, let's start with Elizabeth in case she would answer the question from Daniel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I did receive a letter from a neighbor on Sunday. He is expressing opposition to the proposed zoning exceptions, allowing the lot area to be reduced and the rear yard depth of being reduced to 5 feet due to safety concerns for firefighter access to this address and neighboring properties. He states that West 20th Place is too narrow of a street to ask for exceptions to the zoning ordinance, which are to protect the occupants of new construction as well as adjacent property owners. And he asks that you evaluate the real danger of overbuilding on the street that is already too narrow for proper fire safety at this time. This is from Tom Snyder, and his address is 2015 West 20th Street.
All right, thank you for that. Somebody else wanted to weigh in?
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Kiefer, and along with Tom, I concur with those concerns. I also had other concerns. I own the blue house shown in the slides that'll be directly to the right of this property. And I went over these plans some time ago with the developer and expressed some concerns about accessibility to my property. And with the way this is outlined right now and forecasted, I'll completely use any accessibility at all to being able to park in my area. And on one of the conceptual design slides, it actually even shows the developer assuming some of my land and planting a tree where I put my vehicles. So right now in the slide currently shown, you'll see the vehicles parked perpendicularly to the side of the house. That's not typically how they're parked there. I believe that's like that right now because of the construction going on in the area. And one of the people living here right now actually works for the developer, hence the usage of the lot there. But having this large building built there and so close to my house, especially with how narrow the alley is, it prevents or it could put a lack of actually turning ability to get in there and seat there. Thank you.
Okay, Maurice, does the fire department weigh in on any of these projects?
I do not believe they weigh in for street access.
Okay. Board,
I
any
don't-
questions, any comments?
Mr. Chair, to Ms. Novak, could you describe for us if you're doing any additional fire rating materials in the building, given the neighbors' concerns for the access for first responders?
Sure. I mean, due to building code requirements, the attached garage wall to the north facing his property will of course be fire rated 1 hour. There are no windows or openings that could aid the spread of fire on the facade that faces his house. You know, as far as fire access goes, if you go back to the site plan, our house is set back from the property line in order to help create a wider alley. You know, adding almost like a sidewalk as best we can, again, to create the feeling more of a wider street, less of a narrow alley. Our house will actually be set back further than the adjacent neighbor's home. If there's any more specific questions, I can try to answer them as best I can.
Ms. Novak, would you be willing to upgrade the fire rating on the garage side of the house facing the neighbors?
Yeah, I think we would for sure be willing. If 2 hour would make them feel more comfortable, we could do that in that phase.
Okay, great.
All right, good question, good answer. Any others? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, given the testimony, support from PC as well as city planning, I move that we approve the variances as requested for calendar number 21-088, noting that the appellant has testified that the window well and the air conditioner will be in the rear yard, so those variances are not needed.
And that they've upgraded their fire resistance to 2 hours.
If we can, if we can enforce that, yes, they have agreed to upgrade their fire rating.
So I have a second.
I would second that. Just to clarify, that is on the north wall of the garage, Ms. Novak, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're upgrading to 2 hour.
Correct. We can do that.
Great, thank you.
Liz, we have a motion and a second. Call roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Barnes?
Ms. Barnes, yes.
Ms. Faith?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes, indeed.
Calendar 21-88 is granted. It'll be ratified next week and we will send you a letter.
Thank you, board.
Thank everyone.
Thank you.
Old business. Can we have on the screen our old business?
Coming up, 1 second.
You got it. Okay, old business, we have calendars 1 through 5. Board,
Without objection.
Without objection.
without objection.
And Mr. Chairman, this Hancock Avenue, the councilman did not have, was not able to be at the hearing last week. And so he is asking for us to hold off on ratification as he wants some community input. This is irregular, and I don't know if this is something, I don't remember doing this in the past. If you want to ask Ms. Wagner if there's any legal ramifications, this might actually be the reason why we hold it for 7 days to see if there's any thing that we missed. But this is what the councilman is asking for at this time.
Well, there is not anything in the rules that actually allows you to hold this for this purpose. A councilman, of course, can request a continuance beforehand or request a motion for reconsideration or rehearing. I don't think it's prohibited, but if it went on for any period of time, it could be considered a due process violation for the owner, because we're not following our normal procedure. So what is the councilman asking for?
Is he asking for a public meeting?
So here's the email. Oh wait, I'm sorry. This is what he says, and I received it. I received it 4:47 the day of the hearing. So it says I would like to request a postponement to the subject case to allow for a community process to occur. So
that's really a request that should be made before the meeting takes place.
I agree with that.
It sounds like he's asking for a substantial period of time, which, as I said, I think would be a concern for the property rights of the owner. It is, however, within the board's authority to hold off ratification for some period of time. I can't say how long would be reasonable or upheld if it went to court.
Did I hear that he received, it says testimony that he received notice of the hearing on the day of the hearing after the hearing had been held?
Oh, no, I received the request for postponement that evening at 4:45, after we
Okay.
held our hearing.
Did he make the request before the meeting?
No, I didn't receive anything. So I did tell him that I said that the board may consider a 1 or 2 week extension of the ratification. But I told him that it was entirely up to the board.
Well, this is where my problem is. So if we hold ratification, is he thinking what happens at this meeting, whatever, will change our decision? Then I have an issue with that. So us holding ratification is not really gonna. We made our decision, so I don't really know who hold this up.
Yeah, that would be correct. I think if the councilman feels like having a meeting would possibly result in a new testimony being brought to the board, or him being able to object or support the action, then that would be something that would more appropriately be a motion for reconsideration or rehearing, and would need to meet the standards in the rules, which do give a certain amount of discretion to the board.
Yeah, I agree that I think there has to be a basis on which that we would basically not ratify. And I think that basis would have to have something to do with testimony that wasn't heard or new information that could affect our decision had we had it in front of us. I mean, we don't, those are the questions I have. And I think Kelly, that's the road you're on as well, it's not?
Yes.
I would agree. It sounds to me like he's looking to have a public meeting so that the ruling could be reconsidered. So that really changes what he's asking, it seems.
Well, it's like, what is the reason we need a public meeting? Is there evidence that was not heard? I mean, why don't we put this on hold for a week and ask the councilman if he could elucidate exactly what is the new testimony or evidence that wasn't available at the time that would allow us to rehear the case, because that's what he's asking us to do, I think.
Right.
So he is just asking for us to hold ratification. I wonder if you could ratify it today, and we can notify the councilman that he could request a rehearing with those standards being addressed. But it is up to the board, of course. We can definitely hold it, and I can ask him for further information, of course.
Sounds like the same way to get there, just which branch, the fork in the road, which one do you want to take?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say that we won't ratify it, or we'll hold it off and let the councilman again address the question of what is the new evidence? What is the testimony that was unavailable at the time of our hearing that would allow us to rehear the case?
Or if that's even the councilman's intent.
Right.
Yeah.
It's certainly within the discretion of the board to hold a ratification for a week. That's happened in the past, and it might be the best manner legally to get clarification from the councilman as to what exactly he's asking.
That sounds like a good plan. Liz, why don't you do that? Does all board members agree?
I agree.
I agree as well.
Agree as well.
I agree. So all four of us agree on that. So let's do that.
All right, I'll send him an email.
I think we're done.
We're done.
We are done.
I move we adjourn.
Officially done. I hit the gavel. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
Bye.
Maurice, do you need me to stay on for anything?